Hey guys, welcome to the Gun Den again. And I know you're probably already asking, where's Dad? Where's Joe? And why isn't there a gun in front of you for you to be taking it apart and talking about the history of? Well, today we're doing something a little different. I know y'all probably gonna be like, boo, boo, no guns when I say this, but I've been thinking, and I'm always love reading about books and reading about firearms in books and just getting to learn more about how firearms came to be what they are today. And I'm a big fan of military surplus rifles and I love shooting them, but I also love the history of them and how they were used and what the necessities were that arose that required these people to make these firearms. So I was at Barnes & Noble and I picked up this awesome book called The History of the Gun in 500 Photographs, Time Life Books. And I also have another book called Weapon, A Visual History of Arms and Armor. This talks about more later weapons, more in Europe, going up into modern weapons, but this starts from the very beginning. And I want to do a little interactive series here. I'm going to it's kind of going to be like a history class almost. We're going to talk through the history of the firearms development up until modern times. And the first part here is talking about China in the 10th century inventing black powder. Now, of course, gunpowder was the invention that started, but it was, black powder. Back before we had gunpowder, we just hurled objects at each other and, stabbed each other with pointy sticks. And the invention of gunpowder really changed the dynamic and I'd say the way battle was done in those times. And that really made it to where technology and military doctrines had to kind of change from, a very barbaric sense into, we actually had to apply some real serious dedication and preparation in order to really maximize the use of our armies and to be able to defend our borders to the necessary requirements, or to be able to expand or whatever you're trying to do with your military. But so the first thing was in 10th century China. They discovered that sulfur, potassium nitrate, and the charcoal was able to make black powder. So what this all started out with was back in 10th century China, we discovered there was some special texts actually talking about these special potions that had incendiary properties and caused flames and burns on humans, and they actually burned down several of their structures. And this was actually a result of them searching for an elixir for immortality. So then you start thinking, okay, so they burned down this special hut here and got all that going, and China was actually the first people to actually start using this black powder in bombs, and they used it to defend themselves against the Mongols who were invading China and raiding them. But the Mongols actually learned this black powder and actually are the ones that carried it from Asia all the way over to Europe, whenever, the rise of the Mongols. The crazy thing about this was actually part of the process of the Mongols actually moving to the west was actually came to the Kingdom of Hungary, and they used this gunpowder to totally just cripple the Hungarian forces in the Battle of Mohi. And eventually this Mongolian ideas and this European idea started commingling in the 13th century. It's said that Roger Bacon actually came up with these. He actually had references in his text of this cryptic burning, exploding powder that he had discovered, which, it talks about, you talk about these alchemists and these people doing this, but the fascination that really got people into gunpowder, besides the fact that it was, devastating on the battlefield, was the Europeans were, fixated on the idea of actually being able to turn items into gold. Alchemists thought that gunpowder could be a particular solution to this, and it was actually something they could use to actually cause this reaction. Alright, so then, we start getting more up to the 13th century, late 13th century, starting to get into the 1300s here, and we came up with the cannon. Now, the word cannon is actually a Latin word which refers to the hollow stem of a reed. Now, people realized they could use cannons and they could, put this black powder in the end of this big, huge metal rod. The hollow rod ram a big projectile, big hunk of, whatever down the end, had a little touch hole in the top of it. They could light it and shoot these huge projectiles, and which could really be used to lay siege to castles, I know that King Edward III actually used these against the Scot in the 1320s to devastating effect. But the problem with early gunpowder was it was very easy to cause accidental explosions with it, and the crude metallurgy of the time really caused there to be some issues with actual structural integrity of these cans. So I mean, you just had these cans just explode. Now I want to show y'all, this is something really cool, I think. This cool little depiction of this guy lighting this cannon. It says here that it's a 14th century English scholar, which was the first who really put the first illustration of a firearm in a textbook. It was a primitive can made of iron, it says, which is pretty cool. So like I said before, the can really changed the way battle was done, and even if your army wasn't nearly as experienced as another man's army, but if you just had a ton of these cannons or artillery pieces, and they were entrenched or whatever they were doing, you could just beat them out just by the amount of explosions and just randomly flying projectiles flying around. You'd eventually fend them all off. And this started getting, military designers started working on getting cans that could fire, arrow-shaped items, carved stones, iron balls, even more. They started working on better combinations, working with iron, bronze. They started trying to make stronger artillery pieces, started trying to make stronger ammunition. They tried to change the mobility of these pieces, the rate of fire, the different calibers. They tried to really, this really changed the face of warfare in the fact that you just had all these different new designs flooding in because this new battle implement had arrived, and it just totally changed the way battle was fought, and you needed different cans for different situations. And if you only had one type of cannon or no cans, then you could seriously be at a detriment facing another army, and I think these people realize that. And I just wanted to take a minute to illustrate some of these cool deals here. Here's some of these different cannonballs. This was one from the 1522 Siege of Rhodes. I think that's pretty cool. They just have all different kinds of stuff here. They have different sorts of bronze cannons, 16th century bronze guns, bombards, and this one right here is more of a sieging weapon right here. This one right here is more of an assault weapon. All right, so what happened at this point was we got cannons, we got all these massive artillery pieces. Now we started working. They started to get gunpowder miniaturized, which allowed them to make smaller weapons. They're called hand cannons, or it says back in the 15th century we have handguns. These were huge weapons. They're black powder weapons here, but it required two people to actually shoot them. One had to aim and fire, and the other one had to keep the match lit, and which ignited the gunpowder. But these really changed the face of battle too, because then you had individual guys carrying firearms, so that even negated even more use of weapons such as bows and arrows and swords. And I just want to show you this handgun here. I don't know if I'm butchering that pronunciation or not, but I mean, this thing is huge. You have to have one guy back there with the trigger holding it up, and this other guy's going to be aiming and kind of getting that match all lit up, which is I mean, compared to our standards, just barely. I mean, it looks like a firearm, but it's very, very rudimentary. You just have this just stick with a little trigger that comes out like that, and then your pan, and then your tinder holder there, and then you just light it and let it go. Which I mean, it's pretty basic compared to our standards. But back then, I mean, they allowed the miniaturization of gunpowder allowed there to be a lot more soldiers and increase the range of armies and increase the different tactics they could use, I suppose. The invention of the hand cannon really made warfare a much more dangerous proposition. I just wanted to point out that this is actually an arquebus here. That actually isn't a handgun. They didn't have a picture that actually mistaken that for that. But this still, the handgun, they didn't even look as modern as that, just due to the fact they didn't have the match that you lit and had it release onto the gunpowder pan there and ignite the charge and shoot it off. But the arquebus here was the first weapon that really resembled a long gun, and so it was muzzle loaded by a soldier who packed with the powder and the lead ball and all that stuff and then ignited it. But these guys actually had to use handheld match cords, so it's not like some of the later ones where you could actually hold it up there, and kind of let go. I mean, you actually kept that thing lit, and kept it on your belt side there, and every time, you could light it like that, and or you kept it lit and then you put it on the gun, of course, but you had to keep it lit on your side there and kind of, you know, keep the baby going there. So the arquebus even had this special tiller that was used to go underneath your armpit to actually brace you to actually fire the thing accurately, because these things were so huge. But when there have been modern tests done, it's actually shown these arquebuses were, I mean, they were so powerful they could, I mean, it says they could hurl an iron ball that pierces steel 1.5 millimeters thick. I mean, for a medieval weapon, I mean, that's amazing. And the arquebus was really the gateway into the musket, and by the time we got into the 16th century, that really, we had perfected these methods and started getting the muskets around, and these guns started becoming more reliable. We weren't having accidental explosions. We're actually able to use these guns and actually be able to start relying on them. But yeah, guys, I just wanted to give you all another quick deal. I didn't really mention this before, but with the invention of gunpowder, the main thing was sulfur. The mixture of sulfur with the saltpeter and the potassium nitrate and everything really allowed, the sulfur is what really made gunpowder a more stable mixture and really allowed it to work better. I just want to throw that little side note in. But alright guys, we've gone through the first little section here in this chapter, and I just wanted to let y'all know that I really enjoy kind of piddling around with this and getting to kind of learn some new stuff. And next time we have an episode here, next history lesson, we're going to be doing one over matchlocks and muskets. Well guys, thank you all for coming to the Gun Den and spending a little of your time with me. I appreciate you watching, and I hope y'all have a good one, and I'll see y'all soon. Thanks.